Hi, I'm Candace Harris. I'm here with Pat from the Op, and today we're taking a look at Risk Warhammer 40,000. Hey, Pat, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well today. Can you tell us a little bit about Risk Warhammer 40,000? I mean, it's two classic popular genres or series melded together.
Yeah, so this is certainly one of our specialties at the Op, is taking two things people love and putting them together. And it, of course, started with the Hasbro products with Monopolies and then evolved over the years into a whole bunch of titles. But it's still fun as a designer to kind of dabble in that space of games I played as a kid many, many years ago, going, oh, this is just fun. This is what board games are. And never thinking that at some point in the future, I'd be saying like, oh, I'm taking, and in this case, a really interesting one of one game and another tabletop game and putting them together. But it works so well in this case because Warhammer has such a rich story and background to it. And the team over at Games Workshop kind of gave us some direction in the sense of what story we should highlight. So this is from the Vigilus Defiant kind of story arc. So what we have going on here is this big custom map, and that's always the first step in doing a licensed Risk, is figuring out where the map is going to be, how to divide it up into the right number of territories and regions, and getting that all done. And Vigilus as a planet is sort of this focal point of this massive war. It's sort of a linchpin, and so you've got all the different factions naturally coming together at this point, which works great for Risk because we have to have the 5 factions in the game. And so we were able to take all of the maps of different regions of this planet and kind of figure out how they fit in proximity to one another, and then to lay that all out into the map you see there. And this one, as we do with all of our Risk games, we try to do something a little different that classic Risk doesn't have. So this one, the map has what's called a fort wall, or there's actually 3 of them, and there are these massive sort of extending fort walls that connect regions. And so you can see there's 3 of them there that Lincoln's pointing out. And those actually are a single territory that belongs to 2 of the larger regions. And fans of Risk will know that you get great bonuses if you control an entire region, right? So if you control that entire yellow region in the upper right, you're going to get some bonuses that'll help make you stronger round over round. But in order to control the whole yellow region, you need the fort wall, which is also part of the blue region. So if 2 opposing factions are fighting to control those regions, there's going to be these like knockdown, drag out battles over those shared regions because both of them need it to get their bonus.
Cool. Yeah, so what are there any other like gameplay differences besides the map that are kind of tailored to Warhammer 40,000?
Yeah, so in this case, there's a couple things we like to do in most of the Risk games we do. One of the things that we put into our Risk games is objectives. And so there's both minor and major objectives in these Risk games. And you can still play the classic version where you have to take over the entire map. And I think that's what most people remember Risk as being, in the world map, where somebody always ends up in Australia and they just kind of hunker down there forever and the game drags on a little bit. In these games, you just need to complete 3 of the objectives in order to win. So it's a little bit more about strategy, and when you push your luck and maybe try to have a really big run of successful battles, or you try to control regions for a certain number of turns to hit those objectives. And if you do take out another player, any objectives they've completed, you get to basically take over as counting towards your objectives. So that's still a valid strategy to go for player elimination. But we find it gives some variance in the strategy of how people play and some different tactics that they'll use to get to those objectives. The other thing we do is each faction has a leader, and that leader will move around the board with other armies. They can't work independently. They need to move with troop units. But wherever they're located on the board, they provide a bonus to the region that they're in. So the troops in that area get a certain bonus that they can use. Some of them let you reroll defense. The one we see there on the screen, the despoiler, lets you reroll all ones. So if you have a really bad attack or defense roll
Cool.
with those units, you can reroll your ones and maybe swing things back in your favor.
That's pretty cool. Do you find that having the objective cards reduces the length of the game? Because I know Risk is can be, you know, like a longer game.
Yeah, it does. It keeps it in a sort of a more confined time space, which is nice if you're looking for that more modern time frame of a board game. You know, people tend to want that 45 to an hour and a half tends to be the sweet spot depending on the style of game. And I think Risk still fits within that when you use the objectives. Certainly helps for us with the testing of these games because we can get through a full game and test with the objectives a little faster. But as I said, the classic rules still work. If you have all afternoon and you want that like traditional Risk feel of we play until there's only one faction left, you can do that.
There's a question in the chat asking, are any of the named characters, I guess, from Warhammer 40,000 in the game?
So only in the sense of the leaders that we've chosen for each of the factions. And then within the different factions, the single and triple troop units are themed more around models that you would get. So you have a Space Marine, and then you have various vehicles and things that we used for the triple unit, which is, you know, in classic Risk, it would be like a tank or something to that effect. And it's worth noting that, you know, you take Warhammer, which is world renowned for detailed sculpts, and we gave that to our 3D team and said, okay, we want you to take these massive, expensive, highly detailed models that have to be assembled, and we want you to figure out how to 3D design them to be little itty bitty Risk pieces, but still look like what they are. And so we did some back and forth with our 3D manager, Darren Donahue, and sort of said, okay, which of these can you do that with and still have them look the way we want them to look? And he and his team are just fantastic. We're very fortunate to have a 3D team in-house at the op. And I remember he and sort of our tech in that area who manages our 3D printers and does all of our painting and stuff, we're building Warhammer models, you know, in the office, and just like they got a whole bunch of them. They were putting them together full scale and then like trying to figure out how to bring that all down and which details they could keep on doing those. And we took it as a win that when we sent the renders over to the team at Games Workshop, their 3D team was kind of looking at it and going, how did you pull that off? You know, we weren't so sure you could do it, but they did a great job.
Yeah, I'm also hearing that the insert for the box is pretty cool. Lincoln, do you have that handy to show that? It's cool. Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we try to do the organizer trays whenever we can, and you know, some games like Risk, we can keep a pretty standard mold, which is nice. We know how many factions there's going to be and about how many cards and things like that. And then, you know, other games, we put our in-house team to the task to say, okay, as a designer, I've put all this stuff and we've costed for this size box. Can you make it happen? You know, and that's a fun challenge to figure out, like, how do we get everything in there organized in a way that's intuitive for a fan to put everything back in the box and keep it safe and protected.
Right. I totally hear you then. Let's see if there's any other questions in the chat. Yeah, so how can people get this? Is this currently available?
Yep, this one is out. This one is out now, so it's available. And you can get it definitely at theop.games, which is our website. We have our online store up and running. And then, of course, your friendly local game shops, especially if it's a store where you normally would purchase Warhammer stuff, you're likely to find this game there as well.
Cool. And there's one more question. Has Warhammer 40K always used the term grimdark? Or where did that come from?
That's a great question, because that, I believe, came from the Games Workshop team. So I don't know the history of the term itself. We were working hand in hand with their team on some of the naming conventions and things like that, even down to the detail of the map. You know, we had pulled some stuff from their book and sort of reconfigured the names of locations onto the map in a way that made sense to us. And then they came back and said, well, lore-wise, this isn't quite what you should call that, and this region should have this name, and things like that, which is always a nice opportunity to have, especially a team that has as much history and experience in games as Games Workshop. So getting their expertise and insight for that. And so usually when we do a Risk, it's got some kind of tagline like that is on point for Risk, but specific to the brand. So Rick and Morty, I think, was like interdimensional combat, and Grimdark was the one that Games Workshop chose. I wish I knew the full context, but I don't.
Yeah, this sounds really cool, especially if you're just a fan of Risk and want to try something different, or if you're really into the Warhammer 40K universe. Sounds like it'll be a real fun experience. Well, thanks, Pat. Thanks for giving us a look at Risk Warhammer 40,000, and we'll be right back.